honest to God, there's 3 teams. You can bet on blue, bet on red. If you're smart, maybe you bet on orange. Birds home all week long. And, of course, the Astros here all weekend long. And the Ravens in preparations on the backfields in Owings Mills for a visit to one of our favorite places, Indianapolis, Indiana, the friendly heart of the Midwest. He covers all things Colts as the Colts reporter for the Indianapolis Star. He's freezing his tail out there all winter. I only get the privilege of like 4 or 5 days every February or March. He is Stephen Holder of the Indy Star. You can follow his journey at Holder Stephen, sort of the backwards thing. Hey, Steve, man, it all beats the Dewey Decimal System, which I know we all grew up with. But, hey, 4 years on the Colts beat. They're a box of chocolates this year, right? We have no idea how this thing's going to turn out. There's plenty of drama to go around out there, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting season. So they're coming off, as you know, last year, 8-8, and the way they got there was certainly an adventure with all the quarterback drama, and they had a lot of guys who perhaps underperformed, but then Andrew Luck's back, and they think they've addressed the offensive line in a sufficient way. We'll see. So I think they have a chance to make some noise in the AFC, but a lot of things have to come together, and they have to get it back on track. So it's not going to just happen. They've got work to do.
Well, look, the Orioles in baseball are a great example of this. I mean, the Yankees and the Red Sox, when they were working on all cylinders, it didn't really kind of matter what the rest of the teams were doing. The Colts operated at a completely different level for a decade and a half with Peyton Manning, and then maybe even the early part of Luck and with Dungy and all the things that they went through out there. Even Jim Caldwell got himself involved in a ring. It's different now, and the Jaguars feel like they're coming. The the Texans clearly went out. I got baseball in my mind. They're here this weekend. The Texans went out and spent all the money on Osweiler and really outbid Elway for their own guy. And I think Mariota's going to be able to play. Now, whether Tennessee can get out of its own way, whether that franchise gets sold, but the Colts aren't kind of like the Yankees and the Red Sox. Different stock what we have right now in the Colts. And I think Luck is a question mark. And just looking at him, he looks physically like a different man, right?
Yeah, I think, listen, everything you said about those teams in the AFC South is absolutely true. And the Colts, they better be prepared to deal with it because they're going to have to see increased competition from those teams. I mean, they have, without question, benefited from the fact that all those teams have been sort of struggling intermittently the last few years. Now, that's going to change to some extent. What I would say, though, is I still feel like the Colts are the one team of the 4 teams in this division that have done it. They've been there and done it. They've made the playoffs, won the division, won playoff games. They have played in big games. Those teams have yet to do that. In Houston, when they have made the playoffs, they haven't been able to advance for the most part. So they really don't have anything to hang their hat on in terms of their history and in terms of having had experience at the highest levels of the game and doing it when it counts late in the season, in late December and in January. Those teams haven't done it. The Colts have. So we'll see. I think Andrew Luck has to go back out there and sort of reestablish himself. I'm still a big believer in him, but I'm not going to automatically, sort of crown him. I mean, he's got to go out there and he's got to do it on a consistent week-to-week basis. He still has, as he sort of calls them, his sort of brain cramps where he just makes decisions that are mystifying. He can't do that. That's not elite quarterbacking. He's got to be consistently a good decision maker. He's got the physical tools. I mean, he can make every throw. Just about any throw that any quarterback in the NFL can make, Andrew Luck can make it on an elite level. The question for me is his decision-making. Does he make the right calls at the right times and not try to push balls into coverage and do things like that? That is where he gets into trouble, and that, I think, is what is keeping Andrew Luck from being perhaps considered the truly, truly elite quarterback that he could be one day. So he's got to do that, and he's got to be able to, I think, as well, protect himself, because last year, not doing so, sort of increased his injury toll beyond what was due to him or occurred to him. So that was one issue. Then his inability to play smart also compounded the problem. So he's got to be able to do that and just be smart about protecting himself. He's too important to the franchise.
Stephen Holder joining us here, Colts reporter from the Indianapolis Star. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at HolderStephen. That's STEPHEN as well. You mentioned Luck, and we have the situation with Flacco here where these preseason games, look, man, they suck. You've been at this a long, long time, covering the Bucs and the Dolphins many moons ago. You've been in Indy for a couple of years now. We look forward to these games, and we go out and report on them, and every little tweak and every little hamstring. Last week, Ronnie Stanley wasn't going to play, then he plays, and it becomes sort of a little bit of a non-factor. But with quarterbacks, it's made even weirder by receivers and timing and protection and signals and body language and all the other things that go into making Tom Brady, and Ben Roethlisberger and Aaron Rodgers, and the guys that are really Drew Brees running that same system for so long, that all of that becomes important. But when you physically have an issue with a quarterback, and I know Luck, some of it could be psychological, some of it could be physical. He had a heinous injury. Joe Flacco had a heinous injury. But I'll say this about Flacco. He's been on the field 2.5 weeks now. He looks like Joe Flacco. He thinks like Joe Flacco. He's running around like Joe Flacco. You notice the knee brace, but it doesn't look like it's hindered, it's altered anything about him. Most of you down in Indianapolis, the notion of what Luck used to be versus what he is, he's changed physically, whether he's going to put that weight back on, whether it's going to benefit him in some way. All of that is still, if the offensive line can help him stand up, that's certainly going to help things. But with Luck, you really are waiting to see him in the preseason do the things that he used to do. And I know we're waiting to see Flacco do that. And seeing it on the practice field's one thing, but seeing how it works with live bullets.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of symmetry between the situations, no question. And for one thing, I mean, there's a mental aspect with both of them. With a knee injury, you've got to be able to trust that knee again, obviously. And then I think with Luck's situation, I mean, he had the kidney, the lacerated kidney. I think taking that first hit, for example, is going to be big for him. I mean, he's done everything he's had to do in training camp. I saw every practice, and I was thoroughly impressed, okay? He started slow, and I thought he was a little bit inaccurate, a little bit erratic at times, and maybe not having his timing down. But I think as camp went on, I really saw him start to come into his own. By the end of training camp, I thought he was playing at a really high level, and it was extremely impressive. But he doesn't get hit, as no quarterback does, in practice. So I think taking that first hit and really knowing that you can get back up and go back to the huddle and everything's going to be fine, I think there's a psychological a barrier perhaps that he has to get past. And I don't know if that's the right word. Maybe that's too strong, but I do think it's important. And I think he even said that before the first game where we thought he was going to play, did not play. But I think he acknowledged that, look, I need to go out there and get roughed up a little bit. And maybe that is sort of an obstacle that you get past and then you can sort of move on to the next one. So I think there's something symbolic about that. And then there's also a very real issue there. So I think it's important. And then I just think not having played since, I believe, November 8th or 9th of last season, there's certainly another psychological check mark I think you can put next to getting back on the field in an actual game scenario and not doing it just in practice. I think that's going to be big for Andrew Luck. And I think him and Joe Flacco going through much the same experiences right now.
How weird was the Canton thing, bro? I love me a Hall of Fame speech. I went out with Ogden a couple years ago, and look, around here, we're going to have a couple more visits with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed coming up kind of shortly. So we'll get our August days in the sun, and we'll have the Ravens playing out there on whatever, grass, turf, synthetic, concrete, cement, whatever it is. But that was, from an organizational standpoint, for the Packers and the Colts to show up there and not play a football game, it's almost unthinkable, right?
No, they were really frustrated. I think if you talk to people in the Colts organization, it wasn't so much like we're really pissed off. It was more a matter of how could this happen? How does this happen? And we got our team down here. We're ready to play. We had the snap counts all sort of worked out, knowing, we're going to get a good long look at these guys with 5 preseason games. They were really intrigued by the opportunity. I think first, you have the reaction when the schedule comes out like, we got 5 preseason games, man. But then as you get closer to it, I think as a coaching staff, you start to think about it, and you're like, you know what? We're going to make this work for us. And I think they had reached that point as a coaching staff in the Colts organization, and they realized they could really sort of benefit from this. So they were pretty, I thought, invested and pretty interested in playing in the game, and then to have it pulled out from under them, just massive frustration. But, look, I think the Hall of Fame game, we talked about, early in this conversation, we talked about preseason football being what it is. And listen, I'm not going to make preseason football out to be something it's not. It's not a great product. But I do think there's something special about the Hall of Fame game. I mean, I remember as a kid, that sort of being the beginning of football season in my mind. When you came home from a baseball game or something on a Saturday afternoon and the Hall of Fame game was on, you're like, oh, yeah, that's right. It's time for football. And there really was something symbolic about it. So I think there was a lot of anticipation for the same reason. I think it still holds that same sort of sentimental value for people. So it was pretty tough. And a lot of Packers fans in particular and some Colts fans, it being close to home, a 4-hour drive away, they all made that trip. And they saw the ceremony Saturday night, but the capper was the game. You wanted to actually see some football. So it was a real bummer to not be able to have that opportunity. A lot of disappointed people.
He is Stephen Holder, Colts reporter from the Indianapolis Star. You can follow his journey at Indy Star or out on Twitter at Holder Stephen. That's STEPHEN. You've covered a lot of a mess. I mean, you covered the Buccaneers for a number of years when Schiano came in there and Gruden was getting thrown out and Raheem Morris over his head. And you're in Indianapolis last year. The wheels are coming off the cart. I think it's impossible to kind of not like Chuck Pagano if you know him at all. I know Ryan Grigson also has a pretty good reputation. These are two guys that most people seem to like. And apparently they didn't get along, didn't see eye to eye, and you're reporting on all of that. Every report I read, every thought I had, and I think even in the minds of Pagano and Grigson, that thing was coming to an end. It is a fascinating story in 2016 when an organization decides to go kumbaya. And I know I talked to Jim Irsay a little bit about it at the owners' meetings back in March. This is very, very unique what they're trying to keep together there.
It is. And, it's interesting. I think I do admire Jim Irsay as an owner. And I think he's one of the better owners in the NFL. He's been in the game his entire life, right? I mean, since literally from childhood on. It's all he's done.
Some here in Baltimore would say for better or for worse. Keep in mind your audience here, Steve.
Absolutely. What was I thinking, right?
I'm not sure which Mayflower he drove, but he drove one of them.
But the fact remains that he botched this one, in my opinion. I think he would have done his team a service by sort of making that, or solidifying, I guess, that situation before the season came to an end, because it certainly did not help your team for players and everyone in the organization wondering if they were going to have a job. Is my coach going to get fired? What's going to happen here? And there was really a lot of that. So I just wish it would have been handled differently. And I'm not saying it would have been the difference between them being a playoff team or not being a playoff team, because certainly they had other issues. I mean, we talked about Andrew Luck being out, right? I mean, that was their biggest issue. But, however, I still think it did sort of undermine some of the things they were doing maybe within the organization and perhaps even on the field. I mean, there were a lot of guys wondering what their fate was going to be. There was just a lot of stuff going on.
Well, every coach that walked into every coach's meeting the last 6 weeks thought, we're the Walking Dead, right? And it was reported as such. And no one led anybody to believe it was anything but. I mean, I remember seeing stories last weekend. Sources say Pagano out in Indianapolis. I'm sure there's screenshots of that somewhere, right? Is this going to work? I mean, tell me why it's going to work, Steve.
Well, I tell you what, as much as I, on the one hand, criticize Jim Irsay for letting it kind of fester and leaving Pagano out there as a lame duck, what I will say is he fixed it in the right way. And what he did was, contractually, he tied Grigson and Pagano together. So there's no more either or, him or me. There's no more of that. They win together or they lose together. Their fates are tied completely together. There's nothing coming between them now. So they have to make this work because their fates are linked. So I think that's what's going to be the difference. And I also feel like Jim Irsay kind of taking the heat off and sort of hitting the reset button a little bit. I think it took a little bit of the heat off. There was a little bit of this Super Bowl or bust attitude coming into last season. The Colts went out, were big-time free agency players last year. They had all the Super Bowl talk. There was a lot of thinking that perhaps the Colts were a team that were going to be.
Well, why would they be? They were a step away, and they got soundly beaten by a better team that had deflated footballs. Clearly.
Yeah. So I mean, there was no reason to think that it was crazy talk, but things happen, and that's why we play these games in the NFL. 16 games, a lot of things can happen, right? So, but I think what the point is, though, there was this sort of Super Bowl or bust attitude, and the owner, Irsay, kind of fueled it with some of his own comments. So But what I do think is now him stepping back and saying, look, there is no Super Bowl or bust. This is not a win or else proposition. I think that was healthy. I think he's going to allow this team to now develop players, let these guys grow up, let them sort of turn into a real team, a football team that doesn't go out and necessarily rely on, 5 or 6 big free agents every year to try to get where they're going, because that's a hard way to go in this NFL. In terms of long-term viability, that's not how you win in the long term. So they have, I think, gotten to a point where they understand they can win the right way and win in a way that they can sustain. So the question is, how fast can they get there? That's now the question, because they're not going to go out there and sign, as I said, the biggest free agents on the market. They're going to have to do this kind of organically, but I think that's the way to go, and that's what's going to make you a better franchise over the long run.
Concern, Stephen Holder. Tell me, what are you looking at on Saturday when the Ravens come out there? And look, the Ravens had 23 guys this weekend not on the field, right? So, I mean, Suggs is back on the field, I would be shocked to see him running around on Saturday night. A lot of the Doomervilles, the Pittas, I mean, with all of these questions, not Perryman, all these guys aren't going to be out there. But we get the idea that Joe Flacco is going to flick a few around out there.
Well, I think that, for one, is a great test for the Colts defense. I mean, they're kind of tweaking their scheme, and the scheme well. Obviously, they have Ted Monachino here as defensive coordinator. He comes from Baltimore as the linebackers coach. So, we're interested to see kind of what he does as they get deeper into the post or preseason, as they really start to maybe throw in a few game plan aspects. I think last week was just, hey, go out there, run around, and play a little football. This week, they're going to do a little more game planning, nothing crazy, obviously, and they're not going to show a whole lot, but they're going to do some things that they sort of draw up on the board, I think, during the week. So that's going to add another wrinkle to this week. And then the other thing I'd say is, the Colts, if Andrew Luck does play, and we fully expect that he will, I think he'll get a good little look at what they do at the Baltimore defense. Certainly everyone won't be out there, but I think it's a good test for them to kind of get a test against a team with some decent personnel on defense. That's always good. You want to develop in the preseason. It's all, getting a realistic look at your football team. And I think the Colts will do that. I think it's a good little matchup. They have a lot in common, and they know each other well. So I think we're going to get a good sense of, maybe what these teams' personnel is on Saturday night, at least certainly a better sense than last week.
What the heck happened with Art Jones out there, right? I mean, you talk about the links between these organizations, whether it was the Corey Reddings or the Chuck Paganos or the Monachinos. I mean, Art Jones was a guy in a purple uniform that looked like a guy the Ravens would want to keep around. Maybe not at that price, but certainly a difference-making football player, a guy you wanted to have out there.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. What has happened to him the last couple of years, he has gone from a guy who was, I think, on the fringe of becoming a real frontline player in this league to a guy who now he's trying to rebuild his career here. Okay, let's be honest. So in his first season, he had a really bad high ankle sprain. This would have been, I guess, 2014. Just really couldn't shake this thing. So once he had the high ankle, he just really couldn't get back to where he was. Ironically, one of his better games that year, if I recall correctly, was the Baltimore game. Remember that game?
I do.
Where they came to Indianapolis and really couldn't move the football at all. And
they did that a lot that year, by the way.
Yeah, you're right about that. But that was one of the Colts' more dominant defensive performances of that season. So, they really hung their hat on that one. And Art Jones was a big part of that. And I think as the season went along, this injury just really crept up on him. He couldn't shake it. So, he played through it as he at times when he could, other times he couldn't play. And then so last year he comes into the season with really high hopes, really wanting to make good on that $30 million contract. Every player wants to live up to their contract. No one wants to be the guy who people think are overpaid or was a waste of money. No one wants to be that guy. So I think there was a lot of pressure on Art last season, to come in and be that guy. And in week 3 of the preseason, here we go, talking about games that don't mean anything. Week 3 of the preseason, what happens? Goes down, busted ankle, season-ending surgery. I mean, you talk about a bummer. So that's been the last 2 years for Art Jones, and it's just been a real tough thing emotionally for him. Look,
his brother's gone through hell too. They both. One brother got, Belichick said no mas, and it's been a tough time for that family. I mean, I wrote a lot about that really family when they Art Jones won here. He was a nice part of the storyline. So was Ray Rice at that time. It's incredible 3.5 years later when you start to snapshot out what happens to these guys who were playing in Super Bowls and winning Super Bowls. It is NFL, not for long, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and now he's got a self-imposed obstacle with the failed PED test. So he's going to be out the first 4 games. So really, Art Jones right now is at best on the second team right now on the depth chart at best, and he's going to have to work his way back. However, I think if he can get back physically, he's got to get in shape. He's been out a long time. He's got to get back in shape, and if he can do that and really, I think, recapture some of what made him great, to begin with, he could be a factor for this team. They feel like they have this Colts team feel like they have the beginning of what's a really good defensive line, and I tend to agree with that. So Art Jones could be a big part of that, but he's got work to do, and he's really, as I said, he's just trying to rebuild his career at this point, and he's got a long way to go, unfortunately.
At some point, I'll be back in Indianapolis having some shrimp cocktail down there on the strip with Stephen Holder. He covers the Colts for the Indianapolis Star and Indy Star. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Holder Stephen. That's Stephen. All right, last thing for you. I mean, you're out on Twitter, and I'm out on Twitter, and we're all out on Twitter. Is anybody better than Jimmy Irsay on Twitter? I spent about an hour with him at the owners' meetings down in Florida. And, the Baltimore people can't believe that I get along with him. But we're sitting there talking about the Beatles and Ringo Starr's Drumhead and, Paul McCartney songs and rock and roll history. I mean, he's an interesting cat. He's a true iconoclast. He's obviously had some drug-addled issues, and a lot of skeletons going on there with his old man and what happened here. And he's tried to move beyond that. He's kind of a spiritual kind of dude. But following him on Twitter, as from a beat writer's perspective, there's nothing quite like it in sports, unless you're following Donald Trump in the political space, I guess.
That's about it. That's about right. I like the comparison. I mean, because he's just about as unpredictable as Donald Trump, okay, on Twitter at least. So, but he is an interesting guy. There's no question about it. It is interesting. I mean, I've done this a long time, as you said, and I've never had an owner where you had to worry about his tweets. I mean, this is unprecedented for me. But do I love it? Not really, because you like things to be quiet from the owner's suite as a writer, right? But what I do
every other owner would say he's nuts, right? I mean, that's what they would say about him because the other owners don't behave in that way. But that's one of the things that, quite frankly, draws me to him in some way. You know what I mean?
No question. and I tell you speak his language and you start talking rock and roll. I don't know if you've ever been in his office at the facility, maybe not, but it is one heck of an experience to walk into Jim Irsay's suite at the Colts headquarters. And what do you see when you walk in there? You see rock and roll history, including now the Jimi Hendrix guitar that is encased in a glass case cut out into the wall above his huge oak desk.
Hey, I bet Hendrix played Purple Haze on that, so there. How about that? There you go.
That'll work.
That will work,
I'll
man.
tell you, he is something else, and I tell you, I love his appreciation for life. And as you said, his music, I mean, that is his passion. He really appreciates the arts in general. I think he's a guy that loves life, man, and he's a lot more than just football, even though that's been really his main dominant experience throughout his life. He's a lot more than just football, and I do appreciate that about him.
All right, man, you got your hands full out there with the Colts. Give Pagano my best. I'm going to be, speaking of music, I'm going to be praying and preaching on the north side of the second city with Edward Vedder on Saturday night. How dare I skip the always important second preseason game, but Lucas will be on that for us from Lucas Oil Field. I'll be at Wrigley with Pearl Jam. So that's what I've decided to do. And I don't think I've made a bad choice here on my Saturday night.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to knock you for this one.
Okay, well, good. All right, maybe next Saturday I'll pick James Buffet over the always important third preseason game. But, dude, I can't do these preseason games anymore, man. I just can't do it.
Hey, man, I hear you. I'm there because they pay me to be there. Believe me, it's about the only reason.
Man, it was about 105 in the shade here last week when they got going. You couldn't pay people to come. Steve, it's great having you on, man. Take care of yourself, and Indy, we'll see you out there again soon.
All right, man. Anytime.
You got it. Stephen Holder, Indy Star. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Holder Stephen, and covering all things Pagano and Monachino and luck. And we'll see how much luck they have on Saturday night. Ravens out in Indy on Saturday. You can find me in the Bahia Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from any part of Indiana. We come in crystal clear and no static at all. Our morning newspaper hits your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. and is powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. And last but never, ever least, the breaking news comes first on the WNST Tech Service. That's all powered up by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Complaints, criticism, love, hatred, I get it all at nasty@WNST.net. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and anywhere live video is served on Facebook Live and YouTube on our WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports. Great Towson, Baltimore, and Owings Mills. And, of course, we've heard from Joe Flacco as well as from John Harbaugh. Luke Jones has been out there. You can find all of that in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault, but they're not going to play any games that matter for a couple more weeks, including this Saturday night preseason Shamarola out in Indianapolis. Meanwhile, the Orioles fighting for first place. They're in, they're out, they're percentage points ahead, they're behind, and now here come the Red Sox in for a little cup of coffee and a couple of games. Tim Never covers all things Red Sox. He is their play-by-play voice for the Boston Red Sox. And what a week, man. I don't know who's more exhausted, the players or the broadcasters, right, Tim? I mean, this is the wackiness of this interleague schedule when you got to come back and make games up, right?
Yeah, this was the wackiness of the schedule because, for some reason the schedule makers thought it would be a great idea to have the Red Sox and Indians open the season in early April in Cleveland when the weather can be terrible, which it was. In fact, opening day itself was weathered out. I won't say rained out, but it was too cold to play. And there was sleet and snow and, who knows what else.
It was Cleveland. Let's just say that. It was Cleveland.
Yeah,
it was Cleveland in April, right?
But that game was made up the next day. Then the last game of that series on the 7th of April was, again, weathered out, couldn't play it, so I had to go back and play the game yesterday. You lose a day off. And now you're in a stretch of 23 games in 23 days, which is tough as it is. So overall, we're in a stretch of 43 games in 44 days. And you just, you don't have many days off. In fact, the next 2 days off I think they're both on the road. And I believe there's only 3 days off the rest of the year. So this team has to try to manage themselves, and the staff has to manage these players to try to keep them as fresh as possible down the stretch with a very difficult schedule of a lot of the AL East games coming up.
Well, not only that, I was kind of shocked when the Red Sox came in. The Orioles, it feels like they've been on the road a lot the last 6 weeks, and they have. There was a period in time in the year where, they had played 65% of their games at home and, have sort of made that up now. The Orioles have more home games than road games by a lot. Meanwhile, the Red Sox, it's upside down. The Red Sox are going to spend most of the rest of the year on the road.
Yeah, and that's the way it goes year to year. You're not going to have a balanced schedule. Next year the Red Sox will probably play more games at home toward the end of the season, which is what any team would want. So it's just the way the dice fell this year. This week, the toughest part of this week, though, is the fact that the Orioles and Red Sox have a 7 o'clock game Wednesday, when the game with the Tigers, game one of the Tigers, is at 1 o'clock on Thursday. So, these guys will be playing on fumes Thursday afternoon in Detroit simply because of the fact they might get 2, maybe 3 hours of sleep before the game. And that's not when it affects them the most. It's usually the next day. So the game Friday in Detroit would be the one I would be the most concerned with in terms of fatigue.
Well, even that being said, Buchholz is going to pitch on Thursday. That hasn't gone well, and Porcello being the ace out there on the night when you said they're going to be the most fatigued. But we're going to see David Price, and I guess all of this links back to the offseason and the moves made there. We just saw the Giants. People laughed about Samardzija. People questioned Cueto. They've done okay. Certainly, we all looked at the J. Happ thing and said, well, the Blue Jays got the consolation prize there, and the Red Sox got the blue chipper. Until Price starts turning this thing around, these are the games that he's being paid to win, right? Winning at Camden Yards with first place, second place on the line. This is why he was brought in.
It is, and it hasn't worked out. I mean, he's not even a number one starter on his own team right now. I mean, he's number 3 at best. When you look at Porcello, he's number 1. He's a legitimate Cy Young candidate. When you look at Stephen Wright, he's number 2. He was an all-star this year. And for whatever reason, David just hasn't been able to figure it out. I'm not sure what is going on with Bryce. I'm not sure David knows what's going on. But he says that he is working hard to figure things out. And it's not like the American League or the American League East is anything new to him. This is where he's made his money in the past. So it's really a head-scratcher at this point in time as to why he is where he is. He's got 10 wins. He should probably have about 15 at this point in time, but he doesn't. And the opposition's swinging early a lot against him. They're swinging at a lot of his first pitches, more so this year than any other year. About 30+% of the time, a batter will go up there and swing at the first pitch against him, which is something to keep an eye on when you see him pitch next. So we'll see how it all works out with Price. Hopefully he steps on the gas here and really turns it on down the stretch.
Tim Never calling the Red Sox action on the Red Sox Radio Network, but of course before that has spent time in other places, running around with AAA teams in minor league ball. You've seen it all in baseball, but being a Red Sox, boy, there is something about signing there, and maybe the Yankees used to be that way during the Ed Woodson eras, but the modern era, there's something different about putting that sweater on that can really change a lot of things. And I guess if you're a pitcher, the wall changes you, and if you're a hitter, the wall changes you at least half the time. And then there's just the whole pressure cooker. And I know I talked to Dan Shaughnessy about this a little earlier in the week, saying, well, if you're David Price, you're more scrutinized than the Massachusetts governor, right? I mean, literally from every 5th day when you're a starter, it gets pretty heavy, and I'm sure it's getting heavier now that there are 3 teams in the pennant race.
Yeah, and David only gets criticized once every 5 days. The manager, John Farrell, gets criticized every day, even when they win. So, the politicians who deserve criticism in Massachusetts, and I don't know who they are. I'm sure there are some, but they're off easy compared to the Red Sox manager. The Red Sox manager is the most highly criticized public person in New England, without question. You can win a game. You can, during the makeup game with Cleveland, he brought out Fernando Abad to face Jose Ramirez, and people are saying, why are you bringing him out and making Ramirez bat right-handed? He's a better right-handed hitter than a left-handed hitter. But it worked out. He got the out. And even though he got the out and the Red Sox won the game, people are still criticizing him for the move. That worked. The move worked.
But it's a baseball audience. That's what they do, right?
It is. And if they didn't complain, they wouldn't care. So you'd rather have them complain and care. But it's just amazing to me that he'll make moves that you might say, well, what is he doing this for? This doesn't make sense in your opinion. But you're not in the dugout. People aren't in the dugout who criticize the moves. They don't understand what goes into making those decisions. I'm with them every day, and I don't understand what goes into making the decisions. I'm in the dugout, I'm in the clubhouse, and I'm not in the meetings. And that's where it all counts, and that's where it all stems from.
Well, certainly the right situation was the wrong move, right? And that, if this thing doesn't go well and they finish 6 games out and somehow the Astros get the last wild card and the Red Sox are locked out, people will look back on the right thing as, what the hell happened there? I mean, I would think anybody's shaking their head. Look, if Dylan Bundy gets injured and goes on the DL pinch running during this series, Buck's going to have a lot of splaining to do, right?
No, I think that was the right move, to be honest. I mean, I spent the last 7 years in the National League with the Pirates. It's not uncommon to have starting pitchers pinch run, and the reason that Stephen Wright was there was because he was second in line. The guy who usually is the guy that goes, if you don't have, and when in the American League, you don't have a lot of guys who say, okay, you're my best runner. Like I know the Padres always tapped Andrew Cashner, no matter what. He was going to be their pinch runner because he's a really good base runner. Trevor Wood for the Cubs always pinch runs. I mean, Mike Leake of the Cardinals, he always pinch runs. We haven't had that because we're in the American League. And people in this part of the world who don't see enough National League baseball don't see that. And Rick Porcello would have been the guy. However, Rick had to be flown ahead because we had an overnight flight to the next destination when he had to pitch. So they sent him home early. What was the situation? When Wright came in, he was the next guy. Now, he's a former position player. People forget that. He played third base and first base all through college, and even occasionally in the minor leagues.
Many knuckleballers have that history, right?
Yeah. So he's a decent base runner. He just got fooled. The fact of the matter is that the Dodger pitcher that turned and threw the pickoff didn't even throw it. He faked Steven out, and Steven dove back. What would you have him do? So I don't think that was the wrong call at all. But because he got hurt, everybody wants to lynch the manager. Now, the manager can't predict injuries. If he could do that, he wouldn't be managing. He'd be living in Vegas. So I think this is unfair criticism to John Farrell, because this is stuff in a National League game, which it was in Los Angeles against the Dodgers, that happens all the time, where you have pinch runners as starting pitchers. You're not going to take guys out of the bullpen. You might need them. So you have guys you know are not going to play that day for sure, and they're part of your pinch running pool when you don't have enough guys on the bench that you want to burn at that point in time. They had a backup catcher, which you weren't going to burn. They had another player who was banged up, and they didn't want to run him, and that made sense too. So, again, I think it was the right call and the right guy. It was just a bad circumstance when he dove back in. And the fact of the matter is, he's going to be fine. He's going to miss one more start, and he's going to be back. He'll pitch again on this road trip.
Tim Never joining us here, Red Sox play-by-play voice, a long time in Pittsburgh and Denver and other parts all over baseball. Been around baseball a long time, earning that Red Sox slot. And if you give you $1 right now and bet it on blue or red or orange to win the division right now, Tim, who are you putting your dollar on?
That's a tough question because one of those colors pays me. So,
obviously you're hoping the Reds. Give me a scenario where the Red Sox surge here. I mean, it would have to start with the pitching, and it probably have to start with Wright getting back in the rotation, because I don't think anybody thinks Buchholz is going to be that guy, right?
Well, no, probably not, because Buchholz went 4 1/3 last time out. I think people were happy with it because it was effective and the team won the game. So if he can go 5 this next time. If he does a 5 and fly, I think he'll be fine. And then Steven will jump back in that slot in the rotation. It was also encouraging to see Drew Pomeranz do well in the makeup game against Cleveland. But I've been to the wild card game with Pittsburgh the last 3 years in a row. I don't want to go for a 4th year in a row. I just don't, because I've seen what happens when you win. I've seen what happens when you lose. And losing stinks. Like last year, the Pirates won 98 regular season games. 98 games, and they have to face the hottest pitcher on planet Earth, Jake Arrieta, in a 1-game playoff. That, to me, was a joke. And they had no shot, and it proved, Arrieta was the best pitcher in the world last year by a long way. And that's who the Pirates drew in that 1-game play-in. And, you win 98 during the regular season, and that's what you get? That's your reward? I think that stinks. The year before that, they got into the wild card game, and who did they get? They got the world's hottest pitcher, Madison Bumgarner, who stuck it to them.
And then stuck it to everybody else the next 4 weeks.
And then stuck it to everybody else, is right. And then they went on and won the World Series. So, the thing is, it's so important to win the division, whether you're an Oriole fan, Blue Jay fan, Red Sox fan. You got to understand, it's so important to win the division. The wild card's great because it gives you a chance in the postseason. I love the wild card. The second wild card has done wonders, I think, for many, many cities who otherwise their teams would be out of it. But I really believe that winning the division is key. I'd love to see the Red Sox do it. So would their fans, especially after 2 straight last place finishes.
Well, Dombrowski certainly has not been shy in the trade market. I thought they won, the trade deadline early with the Pomeranz deal. That hasn't worked out so well, though he did pitch well on Monday against Cleveland. And then, they're bringing up guys like Benintendi, who there is a second lifeline there beyond the Betzes and the Bogarts and the Bradleys, and certainly going to have to make do without Ortiz after all of this. But there is a little pipeline, and they're not shy about playing some young players in pretty key games right now.
Yeah, and Benintendi is going to be the everyday left fielder now. He's earned that job until further notice. So, and he's really good. He's got a great swing. He's got great speed on the base paths. We're waiting for him to hit his first major league home run. That's coming. So he's really good. And there's another guy who's really good right behind him, and Yohan Moncada. We expect to see him in September. I think he can help the Red Sox win some games down the stretch. So I do believe that they have enough to win it. But it's going to come down to these head-to-head matchups. You got to win games on the road, and one other thing for the Red Sox schedule. I believe 16 of the remaining games are against teams with losing records, so they've got to make hay in those games.
Always great having you on, Tim. Travel safe. I know it's been a busy week, and this is going to be a quick in and out. I mean, my wife says, when's the last time we played 2-game series against the Red Sox? My wife's a Red Sox fan. I'm an Oriole fan. It is a little bizarre. I must say that.
Yeah, it is, but I think there was a 4-gamer to offset it somewhere in the schedule. So I think the next time we come back next month, we're here for 4. So that kind of evens out to 6. And you do play some 2-game series from time to time when you look at the schedule. But yeah, it's a quick trip, and it's weird because you go Cleveland for 1, Baltimore for 2, Detroit for 4, Tampa for 4. That's a heck of a road trip before you get home, and then when you get home, you don't get a day off. So this is big league baseball. This is how it is. It's the life we chose, and it's the life, and you got to. You get plenty of days off in the off season. So right now, you just put your nose down and grind it out.
Yeah, for some of us, we think it chose us. Tim, great having you on as always, man. Keep the faith. We'll be watching, and I'm sure when we get that 4-game series next month, it'll still be for all the marbles. I don't think any of these 3 teams are running away from anybody else.
Not just yet. They're not. I think there are going to be some great games in September, and looking forward to coming back.
You got it, Tim. Be well.
Okay, thanks.
There he goes, Tim Neverett, covering all things Red Sox as their play-by-play voice after a stint in Pittsburgh and Denver and lots of other places. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Tim Neverett. That's Neverett on Twitter, and also out at RedSox.com. You can find me in the Bayou Toyota audio of all 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear from wherever you are. The morning newspaper finds your email inbox at 7 a.m., and it's all brought to you by our friends at Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. Any breaking news that happens from Owings Mills to Camden Yards, Luke Jones will be on the scene on our WNST text service. You get it sent to your phone. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. It is still our best service, and always brought to you by Coons Ford. And Dennis will be here on Thursday, bringing you home from 3 until 5 and getting you ready for the Orioles and the Astros, as well as for the Ravens and the Colts this weekend. For me, I'm a very available individual. You can reach me anytime, nasty at WNST.net, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook Live on our video, as well as on YouTube, streaming live on our WNSTV channel, and you can subscribe to that, and they will notify you every time we're rocking it here at WNST. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Taos in Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports. Busy week of fun here with the Orioles playing pennant race baseball each and every night down at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. And, of course, we got football happening as well. Ravens getting ready to maybe we'll see Joe Flacco. We certainly hope so on Saturday night. Ravens and the Colts out in Indianapolis for more fake football round 2 for you. Kevin Bowen covers all things Colts out there in Colts land at Colts.com. And it has been a busy offseason for Chuck Pagano and Ryan Grigson. We've documented it earlier in the week, and we'll be up until Saturday night. And certainly the big story is, where is Andrew Luck and how's he going to play? Kevin, always a pleasure, man. How's things in the friendly heart of the Midwest, man?
Nestor, things are great. Happy to join you again. Broke camp last Thursday up in Anderson. I actually got them football in after the fiasco in Canton, and it sounds like Andrew Luck is going to be out on the field on Saturday night. So for the home fans out at Lucas Oil Stadium, they'll at least get the benefit of seeing Andrew Luck for around a quarter or so.
Busy week of fun here with the Orioles playing pennant race baseball each and every night down at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. And, of course, we got football happening as well. Ravens getting ready to maybe we'll see Joe Flacco. We certainly hope so on Saturday night. Ravens and the Colts out in Indianapolis for more fake football round 2 for you. Kevin Bowen covers all things Colts out there in Colts land at Colts.com. And it has been a busy offseason for Chuck Pagano and Ryan Grigson. We've documented it earlier in the week, and we'll be up until Saturday night. And certainly the big story is, where is Andrew Luck and how's he going to play? Kevin, always a pleasure, man. How's things in the friendly heart of the Midwest, man?
Nestor, things are great. Happy to join you again. Broke camp last Thursday up in Anderson. I actually got them football in after the fiasco in Canton, and it sounds like Andrew Luck is going to be out on the field on Saturday night. So for the home fans that are out at Lucas Oil Stadium, they'll at least get the benefit of seeing Andrew Luck for around a quarter or so.
All right, so I mean, you travel with the team. You've been there for a number of years now on this website thing, and people can follow you at K Bowen Colts out on Twitter as well. The whole team gets there; they're ready to play. The Ravens had a similar circumstance with you travel with the team. You've been there for a number of years now on this website thing, and people can follow you at K Bowen Colts out on Twitter as well. The whole team gets there; they're ready to play. The Ravens had a similar circumstance with Brian Billick and Rex Philadelphia 15 years ago, but in the modern NFL and a stadium they run, it really is quite unthinkable, and I can't imagine what it does to the football operations of the Packers and the Colts that are ready to play.
Yeah, no, it was crazy, and you've obviously been to games early on, and I think it was an 8 p.m. kick.
15 years ago, but in the modern NFL and a stadium they run, it really is quite unthinkable, and I can't imagine what it does to the football operations of the Packers and the Colts that are ready to play.
Yeah, no, it was crazy, and you've obviously been to games early on, and I think it was an 8 p.m. kickoff, and around 5 o'clock, you Chuck Pagano there. Why is Mike McCarthy there? Why are there doctors and trainers? Why is there 50 people around the midfield logo and having this meeting 3 hours before kickoff? So I think that was kind of the first sign of pause. Pagano there. Why is Mike McCarthy there? Why are there doctors and trainers? Why is there 50 people around the midfield logo and having this meeting 3 hours before kickoff? So I think that was kind of the first sign of pause. And then all this, borderline buckets of just rubber pellets kind of being put down in the midfield logo. And obviously they were doing anything they could kind of to save the slim chance at that point that they had of playing the game. So I think that's when you first got some pause and you were like, something's wrong here. Borderline buckets of just rubber pellets kind of being put down in the midfield logo, and obviously they were doing anything they could kind of to save the slim chance at that point that they had of playing the game. So I think that's when you first got some pause and you were like, something's wrong here. And then you think back to what happened two together, and that's when the rumors and the rumbling started to happen with the ESPN there getting ready to nationally broadcast that game. But yeah, it was a shock, of course. And I think what it really hurts is your back end of the roster together, and that's when the rumors and the rumbling started to happen with the ESPN there getting ready to nationally broadcast that game. But yeah, it was a shock, of course. And I think what it really hurts is your back end of the roster guys. Those guys, I think an attractive thing for the Colts this offseason was they had 5 preseason games. So if you're an agent of an undrafted free agent, that's very appealing to your client.
Yeah, it's 30 more minutes you get a chance to get some tape, right? Sure.
Exactly,
yeah.
Especially in a game like that where the young guys are going to play a lot. So I think an attractive thing for the Colts this offseason was they had 5 preseason games. So if you're an agent of an undrafted free agent, that's very appealing to your client.
Yeah, it's 30 more minutes you get a chance to get some tape, right? Sure.
Exactly,
yeah.
Especially in a game like that where the young guys are going to play a lot. So I think that's where it really hurt the Colts and the Packers because I don't, it's not like, Frank Gore, Robert Mathis, Andrew Luck, those guys were not going to play much if they were even going to play at all.
All right, so from the Andrew Luck thing, you've seen him throw on the backfields. Obviously, he hasn't taken a hit. Physically, he looks smaller than he looked before.
Play much if they were even going to play at all.
All right, so from the Andrew Luck thing, you've seen him throw on the backfields. Obviously, he hasn't taken a hit. Physically, he looks smaller than he looked before. A different kind of injury than Joe. This game has some attractive qualities. Even Monachino running the defense over there now, where there's a little all-in-the-family feeling between the Colts and the Ravens. Imagine that. Me saying nice things about Mr. Irsay, which I do, strangely enough. This game has some attractive qualities. Even Monachino running the defense over there now, where there's a little all-in-the-family feeling between the Colts and the Ravens. Imagine that. Me saying nice things about Mr. Irsay, which I do. Strangely enough, 30 years later, 28 years later, 32 years later. 32 years. It's been 32 years. God, I got to do the new math.
1984. Yep.
I'm keenly aware. I was on the planet at that point, and so was my dad at that point, by the way. That was his end with the Colts. But these quarterbacks and the injuries and what they're trying to come back years later, 32 years later. 32 years. It's been 32 years. God, I got to do the new math.
1984. Yep.
I'm keenly aware. I was on the planet at that point, and so was my dad at that point, by the way. That was his end with the Colts. But these quarterbacks and the injuries and what they're trying to come back from, and how guys coming back, or Suggs is coming back, or is Pittman going to make it, and maybe Steve Smith plays or not. But when it's your quarterback, Tom Brady has gone through this. Roethlisberger came back from those crazy motorcycle injuries, and we had coming back, or Suggs is coming back, or is Pittman going to make it, and maybe Steve Smith plays or not. But when it's your quarterback, Tom Brady has gone through this. Roethlisberger came back from those crazy motorcycle injuries, and we had Carson Palmer after his injury. All eyes should be on what's going to happen on a night like Saturday night and how these guys look. So far, so good on Flacco in every way. He checks out. How are you feeling about Andrew Luck?
Yeah, he's taken every first-team rep that this team has had since the start of the offseason program. And I think they're...
all eyes should be on what's going to happen on a night like Saturday night and how these guys look. So far, so good on Flacco in every way. He checks out. How are you feeling about Andrew Luck?
Yeah, he's taken every first-team rep that this team has had since the start of the offseason program. And I think there were some rumors kind of floating around in February and March, just how healthy he would be once the offseason program got underway for the Colts. I think it was around April 20th. And again, he took every offseason first-team rep for this team. He did the same thing up in training camp in Anderson. So that's why I do think Saturday is kind of the next step for him. It is getting back to the 20th. And again, he took every offseason first-team rep for this team. He did the same thing up in training camp in Anderson. So that's why I do think Saturday is kind of the next step for him. It is getting back to a game setting. He hasn't been on the field straight at that kidney. He ended up finishing the game against Denver and was actually 5 of 7 post kidney laceration, which is pretty hard to imagine. But now it's live bullets. It's getting hit. It's having to bounce back from a hit at that kidney. He ended up finishing the game against Denver and was actually 5 of 7 post kidney laceration, which is pretty hard to imagine. But now it's live bullets. It's getting hit. It's having to bounce back from a hit or pressure, just those things that you cannot simulate in a practice setting, especially when you're wearing a red jersey. And then you think of what happened around him going into 2016. He signed a $140 million contract. Rob Chudzinski is now his full-time offensive coordinator. He only got one game last year when Chud was the interim coordinator, when Pep Hamilton was lent him. Going into 2016, he signed a $140 million contract. Rob Chudzinski is now his full-time offensive coordinator. He only got one game last year when Chud was the interim coordinator, when Pep Hamilton was let go after the Carolina season. So he's dealing with a new coordinator full-time. He's got a new contract, and I think this is the first real significant injury he's had to come back from. So when you factor in all those things, yes, it's the preseason, yes, it's August, yes, it's, quote-unquote fake football like you alluded to earlier, but so he's dealing with a new coordinator full-time. He's got a new contract, and I think this is the first real significant injury he's had to come back from. So when you factor in all those things, yes, it's the preseason, yes, it's August, yes, it's, quote-unquote fake football like you alluded to earlier. But
it's going to suck, there's no doubt, but it is interesting.
For
right?
Andrew Luck, this is about as meaningful as it's going to get in the month of August.
All right, and how the offensive line is as big an issue, I guess, in Indianapolis as anything else. Kevin Bowen joining us here from Colts.com. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at KBowen. That's BOWEN Colts. All right, and how the offensive line is as big an issue, I guess, in Indianapolis as anything else. Kevin Bowen joining us here from Colts.com. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at KBowen. That's BOWEN. I always judge the preseason by how good the tweets are. Because really, if you have a sense of humor, it's not a bad place to be on a Saturday night.
Especially in the second half.
If you're just there for the football, you got beer, you got cheer. I'm sure. I always judge the preseason by how good the tweets are. Because really, if you have a sense of humor, it's not a bad place to be on a Saturday night.
Especially in the second half.
If you're just there for the football, you got beer, you got cheerleaders. There's other things happening. The best I can do, because I'm not a cheerleader and I can't bring the beer to you on Twitter, is just be funny. But the offensive line here is not going to be a laughing matter for the Colts and for Chuck and for what's going to happen. And look, we have our own issues here. The secondary, how Weddle's moved in, who leaders. There's other things happening. The best I can do, because I'm not a cheerleader and I can't bring the beer to you on Twitter, is just be funny. But the offensive line here is not going to be a laughing laughing matter for the Colts and for Chuck and for what's going to happen. And look, we have our own issues here. I mean, the secondary, how Weddle's moved in, who's going to catch the ball, how's Flacco going to take it. We got a million questions on our side, but I know the Colts do too.
Yeah, and when you draft a center 18th overall, that just doesn't happen every day in the NFL. You don't see centers go that high in the draft, but the Colts is a clear priority. Chuck Pagano and Ryan Grigson, when they talked at the Combine in February at Lucas Oil Stadium, they made it very clear. Yeah, and when you draft a center 18th overall, that just doesn't happen every day in the NFL. You don't see centers go that high in the draft, but the Colts is a clear priority. Chuck Pagano and Ryan Grigson, when they talked at the Combine in February at Lucas Oil Stadium, they